Get your healing items ready.
You need to suppress Alatreon's power using elemental weapons.
Hi guys, this is Sovian today. What would happen if Behemoth and Master Rank Kulf Tarath got together and had a monster baby? The answer would be Monster Hunter World Iceborne's version of Alatreon, a walking, breathing potpourri of elemental mechanics, DPS checks, and one-shot kills that can cart you faster than you can say Escaton Judgement. Well, I guess actually it's supposed to be Alatreon, according to the English dub of the game, but old habits die hard, so Alatreon it is. Now, as someone who went against the original Alatreon and even soloed it in Monster Hunter Tri multiple times, the legendary Black Dragon is one of my favorite creatures in the series. Don't expect Iceborne's version to play exactly the same way though. While I think the original Alatreon hunt in Tri is harder as far as the base fight goes, especially given the tankier controls of the time, the stricter elemental requirements, combined with the new horn-breaking mechanics as well as Escaton Judgement, makes Iceborne Alatreon potentially the more frustrating hunt of the two, especially when playing with randoms online. Why do I keep saying Escaton? Escaton Judgement. But enough talk, let's have at you. Well, have at Alatreon and break down the fight. Also, since this guide is a bit on the long side, I'm adding timestamps so you can use YouTube's handy-dandy chapter feature. Now first, let's go through the mechanics. All Alatreon fights have the same specific flow, which ideally can be summarized into 3 steps. Deal enough elemental damage, break a horn, heal through Escaton Judgement, and well, that's basically it. Pretty much rinse and repeat. Of course, each of those steps has its own nuances, which I'll go through right now. First, let's talk about Alatreon's elemental cycle. Alatreon will always repeatedly cycle through 3 elemental forms. That would be Fire Active, Dragon Active, and Ice Active form. Dragon Active will always be the second form. The first and third form will either be Fire or Ice, depending on the situation. In the special assignment Blazing Black Twilight, for example, Alatreon always starts out in Fire Active mode and will then cycle to Dragon Active followed by Ice Active. Its Event Quest version, meanwhile, can either start out in Fire or Ice mode depending on the day. To know what element it starts out with, just pay attention to the Event Quest's name. If it's called the Evening Star, that means Alatreon starts out in its Fire Active form. If the Event Quest is called Dawn of the Death Star, Alatreon will start out in Ice Active form. Why is this important to know? Well, depending on the form, Alatreon's weaknesses actually change. Yeah, so in Fire Active mode, Alatreon is impervious to fire damage. Instead, the monster has a 3-star weakness to ice, followed by a 2-star weakness to water. It also has a 1-star weakness to dragon and thunder. In Ice Active mode, Alatreon takes no damage from ice, and instead has a 3-star weakness to fire and a 2-star weakness to thunder. It also has a 1-star weakness to dragon and water. And then in Dragon Active mode, Alatreon has a 2-star weakness to dragon and then a 1-star weakness to every other element. Anyway, the reason you want to pay attention to weaknesses is because you want to ensure that Alatreon receives enough elemental damage in order to weaken Escaton Judgement. I know a lot of people are stressing out about this move, but unfortunately there's like no way around that. That is, unless Capcom decides to patch it, so you never know. But actually, you know what, that might help. Even just a 10% reduction in the elemental threshold would probably help, as far as making the fight more manageable and not feel quite as cheap. Now, for those of you wondering what the heck Escaton Judgement is, it's basically an explosive attack that Alatreon does when switching from Dragon Active to its next element. And no, neither the Temporal Mantle nor Superman diving will save you. I know, because I tried. I was desperate. Also, you can't cheese the fight and use a Farcaster to go back to camp. Not only is the Farcaster not available when Alatreon is channeling its Escaton Judgement, it's not available for the entire hunt. Yeah, so what that means is that unless you cart or faint, well, that's the same thing. There's no way for you to go back to camp and, change your weapon or maybe restock on items. That means you're pretty much stuck with the weapons, armor, and items that you enter the fight with. Okay, so having said that, what gear should you bring? I guess you can say that there's 3 schools of thought on how to tackle this particular problem. You can go for diversity and have each member use a different weapon, like ice, fire, and dragon for example, in order to cover all the bases. The only problem with that is that whoever is using fire or ice will essentially be useless from an elemental damage standpoint when Alatreon switches to that particular element. I mean, you can still do raw damage, but that's not going to help lower Escaton Judgment's damage. Yes, I said damage twice. I need a thesaurus. Anyway, if you go that route, that means whoever has the elemental weapon that can do damage at that particular cycle needs to really consistently keep up their uptime as far as damage is concerned. Solution number 2 is to just have everyone use an element that works across all phases, like dragon for example. This means you'll be doing damage during every cycle of the hunt, but your elemental output will be less, so you will need to be extra aggressive at times when Alatreon only has a 1-star weakness to dragon or whatever other element it is that you're using. This then brings us to solution number 3. This is basically the all or nothing strategy where everyone starts out with the same element that Alatreon starts out being weak against. So if you've ever wondered why a lot of people who do the special mission for Alatreon use an ice weapon, this is the reason why. Basically, the goal is to inflict enough ice damage during the initial fire active and dragon active phases in order to weaken Escaton Judgement so you can survive it. You'll know you're successful because Alatreon will topple over after receiving enough elemental damage, which is then accompanied by a message from your derpy partner about successfully weakening or sealing Alatreon's elemental attack.
You're doing a good job containing Alatreon's power.
Of course, now comes the next question. What happens should Alatreon switch to ice active form? Well, if that happens, your full team of ice users is pretty much screwed. Fortunately, there is a way to prevent that from happening. See, when Alatreon switches to dragon active mode, you can actually break its horns by hitting it enough times.
The horns are broken. It doesn't look like it can shift to ice active mode for now.
Doing so prevents Alatreon from switching to the 3rd element, which would be ice in the case of the special mission. Instead, Alatreon will switch back from dragon active to fire active form instead, making your ice weapons especially effective once again. In short, you really want to make sure to break those horns. Otherwise, you might fail the mission. Well, that is, unless you really do a number on Alatreon when he switches to dragon form, which you can still damage with your ice weapons. Anyway, to more easily break the horns, I recommend saving a temporal mantle to safety clutch Alatreon's head. As long as he's not in rage mode, you can slam the monster against the larger triangular walls you see in the stage with a flint shot, which comes with the extra bonus of dealing massive, giant enemy crab damage to Alatreon's head. No word on whether that's historically accurate.
The horns are broken. It doesn't look like it can shift to ice active mode for now.
Otherwise, you can also wait until Alatreon flies and then use the clutch claw to grab his head and then do a flint shot while it's flying. This will send Alatreon crashing down to the ground, allowing you to get free hits on its noggin. Unless you're sure that you can clutch slam Alatreon, don't just mindlessly slap or use the flint shot on its head, as this will make the monster rage. You want to make each attempt at a clutch slam count, because the fight gets progressively harder if you don't manage to down Alatreon for those free headshots. By the way, a successful wall or ground slam will cause Alatreon to drop parts, so make sure you pick those up. Even if you fail the mission, at least you'll get a part from it. I mean, seriously, if it happens to take you a ton of times to beat Alatreon for the first time, as long as you keep picking up those parts, you might have enough materials to make like several weapons. Anyway, the final part of the cycle is surviving the mighty Escaton Judgement. As long as you've inflicted enough elemental damage to topple Alatreon, you will now be able to heal through the attack. Just bring either Astera Jerky, which you can buy from the provisions guy in town, or a great sushi fish scale, which you can gather via fishing. Pick either one of those and then mash that item button once Escaton explodes. You should be able to heal through the damage with just 2 items. You can also lay down a health booster for extra wiggle room as well, but the healing item alone should be fine. Anyway, now that you know the flow of the hunt should be easy peasy, right? Well, not really. Alatreon is one tough cookie and loves to chain moves that get you in trouble. Even if you dodge or survive the first move, the second, third, or even fourth move might be what ultimately gets you. Like a good example is that thunder attack too. Like you can dodge like the first 3 hits and then the 4th hit just carts you because your dodge timing is raw. All I can say is, dodge with a purpose. If you panic and just start mashing the dodge button, chances are you're going to mistime your roll and then end up rolling into like one of the thunder line attacks. And that doesn't even count, you know, like combo moves where he'll do one move and then transition to the next one. Just stay calm. Stay calm. I'm actually thinking of doing a video to break down Alatreon's moves, but in the meantime, here are some general basic tips to help you out. Number 1, healthy body, healthy mind. If you're a Monster Hunter god, congratulations. You should make a YouTube channel if you haven't already. For the rest of us mere mortals, however, Health Boost Level 3 is essential against Alatreon. Not only does it give you some margin for error, it just might buy you that fraction of a second you need to heal through Escaton Judgement, especially if you mistime your heal. Another tip, Blight does not make right. Unless you're running a setup with the Coalescence skill, you'll want to avoid Alatreon's delectable buffet of blights. As someone who commands all the elements, Alatreon can inflict Fire Blight, Ice Blight, Thunder Blight, and Dragon Blight on your sorry butt with its elemental attacks. To summarize, Fire Blight slowly saps your health, Ice Blight impacts your stamina, Thunder Blight makes you more susceptible to getting dizzy, and Dragon Blight limits your elemental damage, so you definitely need to watch out for them. One thing you can do is run Blight Resistance level 3, which negates all Blight elements. You can get the skill by either using Safi, Kirin, or Xeno'jiiva armor pieces, a Blight Charm 3, or Resistor Jewels. Then again, you might have a preferred set that doesn't use any of these pieces. That and perhaps fitting in Blight Resistance through Jewels means you need to sacrifice another skill like Health Boost level 3 for example. If you can't or don't want to put Blight Resistance in your gear, another thing that you can do is to eat for Feline Groomer or Feline Fur Coating at the canteen. Otherwise, depending on the set you're wearing, eating a Veggie Platter for Elemental Resistance L not only boosts your defense against Alatreon's attacks, but just might be able to push your total points for an element up to the 20-point threshold. Doing so makes you resistant to that element's blight. If not, you can just deal with the blight too. That means rolling several times to extinguish Fire Blight from your body, or eating a Null Berry for everything else. Next tip, hit me baby one more time. Okay, so now you're thinking, I'm ready. Where do I hit the bugger? As with many things in life, the answer depends. For cutting and impact damage, Alatreon has a 3-star weakness with its head and front arms, and a 2-star weakness for its tail. Bullets and ammo, on the other hand, do the most damage on the head and tail, which have a 2-star weakness. The front arms also have a 1-star weakness to ammo, so the other body parts are better targets. By the way, the front legs appear to be especially susceptible to elemental damage, so confident melee hunters should target that. More careful hunters can tenderize or soften the back leg and target that instead. Softening one hind leg with the Clutch Claw will apply the tenderizing effect to the other hind leg as well, which is super convenient. By the way, that works too for the front legs or arms. You only need to soften one front leg in order to tenderize both front legs too. For bowgunners, the best strategy I've observed is to tenderize the tail with a Clutch Claw and then go to town on that. This gives you a big target that you can shoot from a safer spot and does massive multi-hit damage with elemental shots as well. You can then switch to the head to help break it when Alatreon switches to Dragon Active mode. But the tail also remains a good target during that time. For bow users, just soften the head with the Clutch Claw and then target them. Given how light weapons take longer to tenderize enemy parts, and the fact that clutching the head is especially dangerous, wearing a temporal mantle helps when doing so. Anyway, as far as other random tips and pointers, we have a list of old dependables that you can count on. For example, eating for a Feline Safeguard or Feline Insurance gives you extra breathing room against untimely carts. Eat for both and you can actually get a 4-player wipe from Escaton Judgement without failing the mission. In fact, every time I see Feline Insurance pop up in my canteen food options, I always pick it and then host the mission myself instead of joining someone else's. That's because there's a good chance that someone who joins will eat for Feline Safeguard, giving us an extra 2 carts. Also for bowgunners, don't neglect your status shots if your weapon can fire them. Even if you're only able to trigger a status ailment once, that one time could be the difference between breaking the horn or peppering Alatreon with enough elemental damage to topple it before Escaton Judgement. While you can't control team composition when hunting with randoms, having a balanced group makes the hunt go better. The best hunts I've had typically involved either 1 or 2 gunners, 1 heavy weapon user like a greatsword or hammer for easy tenderizing, and then 1 or 2 light melee weapons like a dual blade, longsword, insect glaive, or sword and shield for more mounting opportunities, and dropping slinger ammo for slamming Alatreon. Don't underestimate how little things like bringing Dust of Life helps as well. Until more people get familiar with the hunt, The gap between clearing Alatreon and failing can be mere inches. Also, I know the fight might seem impossible at first, but to quote Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. Monster Hunter endgame content usually feels that way, and chances are you'll get used to it the more you do the battle. Hopefully, as more folks in the community become familiar with the fight, random multiplayer sessions become more successful too. On the plus side, Alatreon at least scales down with solo or dual play, unlike Behemoth, who's the only other monster that took me an insane number of attempts to clear. I do find it funny that the two monsters I struggled most with both share insta-kill mechanics. Also, don't automatically give up if things don't go ideally right away, especially if you notice that your team is actually fighting well. I actually had one hunt where I carded while fighting Alatreon solo, right as the hunt scaled up for multiplayer and my random teammates were arriving. And then after that, I carded 7 minutes later, which meant I pretty much ate up our feline insurance and feline safeguard within the first 10 minutes. Naturally, I felt utterly terrible about it. But I noticed that my team did not give up and was still fighting hard, so that motivated me to fight even harder. Because I've been in hunts where when something like that happens, not even with just me, but other people, like people just start leaving. Anyway, we ended up with 2 more members carding, but were otherwise doing great elemental damage and broke Alatreon's horns to boot, so we kept plugging on and helping each other, no matter how hairy things got. 2 Escaton judgments and many dusts of life and desperation Superman dives later, Alatreon was slayed. Ah. To this day, that remains the most epic Alatreon hunt I've been personally involved in. I mean, I never really remember hunts where everything goes well and the monster goes down easily, but I always remember the really tough ones. Anyway, up next is familiarizing yourself with Alatreon's moveset, but that's a topic for another video since this one's already gotten pretty long. As always, please feel free to leave any thoughts or questions you may have in the comment section. Once again, this is Tabi, and thank you for watching.
Wow, you did it! We need to report to the guild immediately!